The Nikon Z 600mm f4 lens just might be the craziest lens that I've ever shot with. The images are sharp, the focusing is fast, and the layout is incredible. 2 weeks ago, LensRentals.com sent me the Nikon Z 600mm f4 to shoot the total solar eclipse with in Texas. Over the last 2 weeks, I've had the opportunity to put it to the test with birds, aviation, and astrophotography. I can't express enough how much I love this lens. So let's first take a look at the specs on this lens. This lens is a 600mm prime with a maximum aperture of f4. It comes in with a price tag of $15,499.95. The weight of this lens is 3,260 grams, or about 7.18 pounds. The next thing to take a look at on it is going to be the size. So as you can see here, it's got a 6.5-inch diameter here on the front, and it's 17.3 inches long without the lens hood. So that is just small enough to meet carry-on requirements so that you can carry it on with you on your luggage on an aircraft. When you throw on the lens hood here, which is also a pretty large piece, you extend the length of this lens out to 22 3/4 of an inch. So it's really massive when you're out in the field shooting with it. So the aperture on this lens is a maximum of f4 and a minimum of f22. And additionally, one of the cool features on this lens is it's got a built-in 1.4 teleconverter. So that takes your 600mm shots out to 840mm. And there's also additional things you can do to get even further reach. So if you're at that 1.4 teleconverter and you go into a crop mode, you're now going to be shooting at 1,260mm. On top of that, you can also stack teleconverters. So if you add an additional 1.4 to the already 1.4 built into the lens at 600mm in a full frame mode, you'll now get an effective length of 1,176mm. And if you want to go even further, if you're shooting video, if you crop down to a 4K video, which will take you to a 2.3 crop factor, with a 1.4 teleconverter that's built in, you'll be shooting at 1,932mm. And then if you stack with a 1.4 teleconverter on top of that, you'll be shooting all the way out at 2,704mm. So even though it's a 600mm lens, you've got a lot of options for extending your reach, even though it's a prime and you can't actually adjust the focal length. There's also several other features that are built into this lens. The first one is that it does have image stabilization built in, so pairing that with the Z series camera, and you're going to be able to turn on image stabilization. Next up, there's a really easy switch to get to for your teleconverter. It's got a movable switch and also features a lock so that you can lock your teleconverter in place. You also have an autofocus and a manual focus switch that you can use, and you've also got a switch for what focus range you want to use. You have the options of either using the full length of your focus distances, or you can limit it to 10 meters out to infinity. This lens comes with a focus ring as well as a programmable function ring that you can set up using your camera. The next spec to highlight is that on the side there is a save focus position button. So when you hold this button down, it'll save your current focus position, and then using the focus recall ring, you can get back to that point if you change focus. This can be really helpful whenever you're shooting an object and your camera loses track of it and you can't get back to that focus distance using the autofocus. This can be used to snap back to that focus position quickly. Near that focus recall ring, you'll see that on the ring there are 3 function buttons that are programmable. The next item of note is that there are strap locks that are on the side of the lens, and these just make it more secure for you to put a strap onto the lens and be able to carry it. And as we've already talked about, this is an expensive lens, so it should be noted that on the outside there's also a spot where you can secure a Kensington lock to the lens. The next feature that this lens has is a rotating tripod collar, and for filters you use a rear drop-in filter system that uses a 46mm filter. And then finally, this lens comes with Nikon's superb weather sealing. As far as other items that you get with the lens, you get a lens cover, as well as a really awesome bag to help store and protect this lens in. So if you made it this far into the video, I'd really appreciate it if you'd like and subscribe to my channel. Currently working on getting to the point of being monetized, so any new subscribers that I do get helps me get to that 1,000 mark. That will eventually lead me to being monetized and being able to provide more content like this in the future. Now that we've gone through the specs and the features of this lens, let's talk about what I liked about it. So I think one of my favorite things from this was just how well thought out the user experience is with the lens. For aviation in particular, that was where I really got to make use of all the functions on the side. I found that the teleconverter was really easy to switch back and forth from going from 1.0 to 1.4, and then also locking whenever I need it to if I thought the lens was going to move. Additionally, I found the button for saving the focus position to be in a really easy spot to just use my pointer finger to just click it whenever I was setting up for the day. And then using the recall buttons out on the lens wherever I was holding it, those were also really easy to get to and provided me a quick focus point to get back to if the camera ever lost the subjects of the photos. And then along with this, I felt that the focus rings were really easy to get to as well, and also the function ring. The next thing that I was really impressed with on this lens was how sharp the images are. I've shot with a Sigma 150 to 600 millimeter lens for the last 6 years, and I've always loved that lens. However, I found out about 7 months ago how unsharp that lens actually is whenever I bought a 2.0 teleconverter for it, and realized at that point the images really weren't useful. So I was really excited that this lens was so sharp even when using the 1.4 teleconverter, as well as going into the crop 4K mode for video. The next thing that I was really impressed by was the bokeh. So whenever you're shooting a object at f4, I was really astounded at how soft the background became. And that was really incredible, again, just compared to my usual shooting with the Sigma 150 to 600. And additionally to that, with that comparison to what I'm used to, I also found that this lens had very little vignetting out in the corners, which I think I would expect with a lens of this price and magnitude, but really getting to see it and realizing how little vignetting there is out in the corners was just really cool to see and to understand how well the optics actually are on this lens. Along with that, just how fast it is too at f4. Being able to shoot at 600 millimeters f4 at an air show in low light situations, that was really awesome, and also helped create separation between my subject and the background. I also found the lens to be extremely well balanced. I did a lot of handheld shooting at the air show and also with some of the birds that I took photos of, and it was just really nice that it was balanced around my left hand when I was shooting and made it a little bit easier to hold considering the weight and the size of it. And although I don't shoot a lot of video, one thing that I did want to point out on this lens is how well it performs with focus breathing. So if you're planning on shooting video with it, be aware of that. You're gonna get pretty high quality video out of it. And lastly, out of my likes, the craziest thing to me was how great the autofocus was. It was extremely fast with the lens, and that was also paired with my Z8 that, as you know, is relatively new to me. I've been shooting on a Z6, so getting to shoot on this lens with a Z8 with air shows where the jets are moving extremely fast was really impressed at how quickly it could pick up the object using the airplane detection mode and then stick with it, which I know that that's a combo of the camera and the lens, but I was really impressed with how quickly the lens could pull something into focus. So let's talk about the dislikes that I had about this lens. The first one was the weight and the size. So if you think about being out in the field trying to handhold for 30 minutes, maybe an hour shooting wildlife photography, or in my case aviation where I spent a lot of the time testing this lens out, your left hand and right hand both get extremely sore holding the weight of the lens and the camera that you've got attached to it. So yes, it does get tiring. However, there's a couple of ways you can combat this, and a lot of people are probably familiar with this using either a tripod or a monopod. For my case, I actually used a tripod for most of my shooting. That way I could switch easily between two different cameras. One that was on a strap, and then the tripod carrying the larger telephoto lens. And one other downside with the weight and the size, I did shoot the total solar eclipse with this, as well as some photos of the Orion Nebula, and I was definitely at the maximum weight limit for my star tracker. So if you're looking at using this lens for some sort of astrophotography purpose, just make sure that you've got a tracker that can support the weight. The next dislike or downside to this lens is really the price. It's going to limit a lot of people from being able to get this lens. I can even say for myself, this is likely a lens that I will never be able to purchase. So getting the chance to test this from lensrentals.com was an incredible experience. But being able to purchase it, I think, is really going to come down to the professional photographer who's going to be able to get a return on investment for the photos that they take from this, or just a hobbyist that has a lot of money laying around that they're willing to spend on a lens. But I will say, even though I dislike the price, I can't speak more for how great of a lens this was and how much fun it was to shoot with it. And the last complaint that I have about the lens is I don't understand why, but it doesn't have a built-in Arca Swiss mount on the rotating collar. So you'll have to go buy a separate plate. I was able to pick one up off of Amazon for just a few dollars, and I'll leave that down in the description, but you'll have to buy that extra piece to be able to mount this on your tripod or your monopod. I want to take a quick moment to thank lensrentals.com for providing me with the equipment to make this review video. you're ever in the need of a camera or video equipment for a special job, or just don't feel like buying something yet and want to test it out, I highly recommend them for short-term rentals. In my mind, they are the leaders in the US-based camera rental business due to their incredible customer service, fast shipping, superb packaging, and willingness to ensure that you get the right equipment you need. If you're finding yourself wanting to rent the 600mm f4 lens to give it a try out before purchasing it, please be sure to check out the link down below that'll take you over to lensrentals.com where they can set you up with a rental. So let's talk briefly about who this lens is for. Wildlife and birding are going to be a great option for this lens. It allows you to stay far away from your subject while still getting tight-end photos of them. And you can also get great video using the lens as well for that. The f4 aperture will also help you in low light situations for wildlife photography, as well as to get that soft bokeh effect around your subject. The next big use case that I see for this lens is sports or action photography. I was hoping to go get a chance to shoot the Texas Rangers playing over in Arlington. Unfortunately, that didn't play out, but I would definitely highly recommend this lens for sports photography. The maximum aperture being f4 is also going to help you with sports photography, as it will help you in low light situations and also to help you increase your shutter speed for fast moving objects. The next area that I would recommend this lens for would be aviation, plane spotting, taking photos at air shows. Those are all great use cases for this lens. You get a lot of reach. One of the things I found kind of funny being out at the Wings Over Cowtown Air Show, shooting with a lot of photographers, was how many times I got told, "Why are you shooting with a 600mm lens?" I can tell you I love the images that I got with it. I normally shoot with a 150 to 600 where I'm changing my focal distance constantly throughout the air show, but having a fixed 600mm really forced me to go take some different shots that maybe I wouldn't have gotten, trying to get close in on the cockpit, forcing myself to take photos when the planes were further away to fill the frame with them. I really got some incredible images from it. The next two areas that I would recommend these for are maybe not the best use cases for a lens like this because of just how fast it is. However, it was really great for them. So I mentioned I shot the total solar eclipse. I was actually planning on trying to get a 400mm lens. However, that didn't work out and I ended up with the 600mm lens, and the photos I got were incredible. First off, it's just an amazing experience to see totality, but to also get to photograph it at the same time and to be able to walk away with the cool images of the corona, the flares that were visible off of the sun. All of it came together perfectly with this lens. The lens also provides ability to shoot deep space objects, so I was able to test it out using the Orion Nebula. Even just a single image of it processed looks incredible compared to what I'm used to getting off of the 150 to 600 Sigma. And then last but not least, I would also recommend it for landscape photographers. I'm a big fan of taking those long focal distance so that you can be zoomed in on something way out in the distance and just focus on that one point rather than trying to pull in the entire landscape. So that's the last area that I would recommend it for. If you think I missed one, please be sure to drop that down in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think I missed and also provide more context for the other viewers. So let's take a look now at some alternatives to this lens. You've heard me already talk a little bit about the Sigma 150 to 600. I'm going to just completely leave that out of the alternatives right now. Just because of how much of a higher performance lens this is, I think the alternatives that need to be mentioned need to be in the same class. So the first one that I want to mention from Nikon is the Nikon Z 400mm f2.8 with a built-in 1.4 teleconverter. This lens is basically going to be your next step down from the Nikon Z 600mm f4. But you'll already notice you get a faster aperture at f2.8, along with that same built-in f1.4 teleconverter. In addition, the price is slightly lower at $13,996. It's also going to be slightly smaller at a 6.1 inch diameter, 15 inches long, and lighter at 6.5 pounds. Moving on, if you're looking at that 400mm range, there's a much cheaper option. This is going to be the Nikon Z 400mm f4.5 vibration reduction S lens. This lens is going to come out with a price tag of $3,246. It does not have a teleconverter, but comes in at a much lower weight at 2.7 pounds, a diameter of 6.3 inches, and a length of 13.4 inches. If you want to stick with the 600mm focal length, there's a Nikon Z 600mm f6.3 vibration reduction lens that once again does not come with the teleconverter, but is going to be at a much lower price. than the 600 millimeter with the 1.4 teleconverter. This one comes in with a price tag of $4,796. This lens is going to have a max aperture of f6.3. It's also going to be a lot smaller than the 600 millimeter f4, coming in at a weight of 3.24 pounds, a diameter of 4.2 inches, and a length of 10.9 inches. And the last lens that I would take a look at as an alternative, if you really want the 800 millimeter focal length, but you need something cheaper, would be the Nikon Z 800 millimeter f6.3. This lens comes with a price tag of $6,496. It's slightly lighter in weight at 5.52 pounds, and just a tiny bit smaller with a 5.5 inch diameter and a 15.2 inch length. So wrapping this video up, I think the 600 millimeter f4 was an incredible lens to get to shoot with. I really hope in the future I get a chance to shoot with it again. And I really want to say thank you to LensRentals.com for loaning me this equipment so that I could get a chance to shoot with such a high quality lens. I'd really appreciate it if you smash the like button down below if you liked this video. And also please be sure to subscribe if you want to see more videos like this in the future. That helps me grow my subscriber base and allow me more opportunities like this to get to review equipment for you. As always, I appreciate your time and I'll see you in the next video.